Blessed Mother, save us.
I'm LegenTerry, and this was the early access open beta for Diablo IV. It is being developed and published by Activision Blizzard and possibly Microsoft in the future. That's unclear for now, but yeah, where do we start? I guess I should mention that this was a public beta and not a final product, polished as it may be. For the uninitiated, Diablo was once the heavyweight king of isometric camera CRPG dungeon crawlers. The narrative work and tone set by Blizzard many moons ago was unlike anything ever written in games of its time. The first two games were met with extreme praise, especially Diablo II and its expansion, Lord of Destruction. The community would continue to play and support Diablo II as Blizzard moved on to other properties. After an 11-year hiatus, Diablo III was finally released, and it disappointed. This was my entry point to the series, as I didn't have access to a home PC until a couple of years after Diablo II was released, by which point my time was invested deeply into World of Warcraft. Diablo 3's story was seen by most as an underwhelming follow-up to what fans anticipated, and the art style followed suit with Blizzard's other titles, taking on a more vibrant, cartoonish appearance. But that barely did the game's reputation as much as the terribly monetized auction house system that allowed players to sell items to each other for real money while Blizzard skimmed off the top for each sale. Not only was it a greedy decision to include in the first place, but it also disrupted the entire balance of the game's loot, making it nearly impossible to play. The drop rates of the strongest items were kept abysmally low, as it would drive players to the auction house to spend money on those more fortunate or those with enough spare time to farm for days on end. From there, they eventually removed the auction house and released Reaper of Souls expansion, which restored some faith in Blizzard and brought back player interest from the dead. At least until...
The current plan is to be on mobile, both Android and iOS. We don't have any plans at the moment to do PC. Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
They nosedived that faith straight into the ninth circle of hell with a mobile game. After this absolute blunder, they remastered Diablo II and its expansion as Diablo II Resurrected, and it was received relatively well. Kinda hard to dig any deeper than rock bottom, so well done, I guess. My enthusiasm for anything Blizzard has waned significantly since the merger with Activision took place. Overwatch was fun for about 2 weeks until the rampant loot box problem became apparent, Cataclysm was the last time I stepped foot in a modern World of Warcraft expansion, and the nostalgia of Classic was short-lived. This, on top of the reports of unethical and outright disgusting culture coming from within the studio, left a sour taste in my mouth that hasn't been washed away yet. And oh god, please don't ask the gaming community how they feel about Overwatch 2 existing. What a mess. That brings us to today. Activision Blizzard is currently in the throes of the largest gaming acquisition in history by Microsoft. Bobby Kotick is sadly still in the driver's seat, although his future remains unclear, and they have tried to claim that their internal audits will turn things around for the better while simultaneously busting worker unions. Still don't know how to feel about funding Activision Blizzard until things are sorted out there, but since I just had to buy some chicken to play this beta, I don't feel as bad as I would have directly supporting them for now. So why am I bringing up all this? I think it's important to know the history of the Diablo franchise and those who created it to understand where it is now, to sort of see the full picture. TLDR, it was an extremely beloved franchise that fell far from grace and is now seeking redemption. So far, all signs point to Diablo IV being a worthy successor to the Diablo name. They returned to the dark and wicked roots the first two games were known for, grounded the art style in gore and filth, and have reiterated that the monetization will be strictly cosmetic with no loot boxes. They've even gone as far to say the items found in-game will be on par visually with paid options. Of course, that's a matter of perspective and opinion, not fact. But alright, enough of me rambling about the days gone by. Much time has passed in the land of Sanctuary since the events of Diablo III. A female demon named Lilith, the Daughter of Hatred, has been summoned by a foolish group of would-be thieves through a blood ritual. Claiming to be the creator of Sanctuary itself, she now travels across the lands tempting mortals with forbidden knowledge and seeding the idea that their faith in the Haradrim has been misplaced. Her motives are held close to her chest, but it's clear that her victory means that humanity will suffer. Your character finds themselves caught up in Lilith's treachery, and their fate is bound to hers in ways unknown. In Diablo IV, the age-old formula of collecting stronger and stronger loot over several tiers of rarity still manages to scratch that insatiable itch. Diablo has always and will always be about the loot and pumping up those numbers to slay dozens of on-screen demons. The joy of crushing swathes of buffed up baddies and seeing that glorious legendary orange glow emanate from the items dropped in their wake remains untarnished. If you're only here because you want to get that dopamine hit and feel like an absolutely unstoppable, powerful demigod, your time here will not be wasted. Legendaries were dropping at a pretty consistent pace. Now, I can't speak to the viability of the loot in the in-game exactly, this was just a beta after all, but one thing that concerned me a little bit is that some of the legendary gear felt lazy? I don't know if that's the right word for it, but whatever. The point is, most of the orange items I picked up had most of what you would expect. Higher than average stats, a gem slot or two, and something that aligned it more towards one class than the others. The problem arose when I started noticing that almost every unique perk on armor was just insert number of skill points onto your character, rather than something truly exciting. This also made build crafting a bit clumsy because those numbers would be reflected in your actual skill tree. So if you get a tunic that gives you 1 point in poison traps, that would actually unlock that node and show that you have spent a point in it. It isn't until you move your cursor over that skill to see that the number is now purple, denoting that a piece of gear you have on is giving you that point. The same skill point additions didn't seem to appear on legendary weapons as they actually get unique attributes, at least in my experience. I played through the beta as a rogue, which I assume plays mostly like the assassin class of old, but also mixes in some intricacies of Diablo III's Demon Hunter. Your talent tree here includes a blend of options for either close quarters or ranged combat using a bow or crossbow. There are some skills that use stealth and subterfuge, some that lay traps to control crowds, and others that imbue your weapons and other skills with elements. As I assume it is with most other classes, you have basic attacks that build up energy, and then core attacks that expend that energy. The resources have different names of course, mana for sorceresses, fury for barbarians, etc., but they generally function the same way. The skills you choose can drastically change the style of gameplay, and luckily the devs were kind enough to let you reset all or some of your skill points individually at any time. I believe that's even free for your first 10 levels of progression if you don't exactly like the direction you started with. And yes, I'm referring to in-game currency this time, no sneaky microtransactions here. The skills are laid out in an easily comprehensible way where you start at the top with your most basic of resource building attacks and move downwards through a series of nodes that include ways to use your resources. Each node includes a set of attacks or actions that then branch off into modifiers that further augment what that attack does. Those branches will generally block you off from choosing the option opposite of it as they further define your character's build. You can also put points directly into the attacks or actions, increasing the base damage, effective duration, or decreasing the cooldown. For my rogue, I wanted to get up close and personal and run circles around my enemies. I chose a couple of melee skills to generate resources and push out major damage, leaving myself as a little bit of a glass cannon. But then I had a really nice crossbow drop and, well, my plans changed. I ended up swapping to a seeking arrow and a rapid fire arrow volley, using caltrops with a chilling effect to slow down enemies that got too close and dashing away when I was in extreme danger. I really enjoyed the ability to crowd control and push off enemies from a distance, but I definitely plan on rebuilding my character as a speedy brawler when the opportunity comes, or in the full game if I decide to pick it up. There are also ultimate attacks that are unlocked at the current max cap of level 25 in the beta, which create massive area of effect fields for tons of damage. The cooldown isn't too shabby either, with them being roughly a minute or less rather than something you'd spend 10 minutes waiting on in a lesser game. Diablo IV takes the Gothic horror setting to its most extreme form. The world feels violated and desolate in the best ways. The environments here are beautifully grotesque. Most of the overworld areas are natural, dotted only with the remnants of human civilization that existed prior to the recent demon attacks. Rustic wooden villages and cathedrals of stone and stained glass are the norm. Beneath the surface, however, ancient ruins are saturated in a violent mix of organic tissue and bloody body horror that is sure to make your skin crawl. Tombs and catacombs, lit by sickly blue flames, spring to life with creatures from the underworld. Diablo IV returns to the old ways once again with its level design. Where Diablo III's world was generated by a randomized algorithm for each session, Diablo IV's overworld is a static, handcrafted creation. This allowed the developers to place NPCs, quests, enemy spawn locations, and dungeon entrances consistently. What does remain random is the dungeons themselves, with Blizzard including over 150 procedurally generated versions in the final game. This seems to strike a pretty good balance between fun exploration and familiarity with locales that prevent you from getting too lost or feeling like you'll never arrive at your destination. It's also a way for Blizzard to instance players into their own chosen difficulty world tiers, which lets players see each other running around the overworld and help out whenever they feel like, kinda like an MMO. It seems like they also studied games like Destiny as well, because there are now public events where a marker is placed on the map when running nearby, and one of several events occurs for players to pitch in and receive a chest full of loot at the end. Not only this, but there are also extremely difficult strongholds for players to tackle and world bosses that spawn on a set timer. I believe only one of these were available in the beta, but I definitely like the idea of a world boss banding together players without the need for matchmaking. Unfortunately, I missed the window on fighting it since I didn't hit 25 until the last day of the early access beta was up, but I've heard that it's pretty tough, and it should be back around to try out when the beta goes fully public soon. Of course, I would be remiss not to mention the plethora of side quests. Some of them are pre-generic tests of your skills in combat against some big baddie or fetch quests that have you collecting demon hearts or ghostly energy. There are also some that linger for multiple steps and lead you down a linear narrative. For example, one followed a holy woman visiting different homes in different towns where people claimed to have family members possessed by demons, and you had to help her exorcise them. There are also hidden objectives around Sanctuary, like statues of Lilith that give additional permanent minor stat boosts to your character, or others that will give you a buff or a spawn chest for performing the correct emote. Most of the dungeons that appear on your map will also reward you with class-specific modifiers to your existing skills upon clearing them. Little touches like these means that your curiosity will almost always be rewarded. The sound design and original soundtrack of Diablo IV perfectly match the brooding atmosphere. The sounds of combat, the crunching of armor, squelching of flesh, and the crackle of spells are all crafted with acute attention to detail. The ambient sounds of gnashing teeth and cries for help in the distance fill the air. Detuned acoustic guitars, cello, and violins play melancholy melodies during the quiet moments. I was a little disappointed that there weren't more bombastic boss battle themes present in beta, but I assume that there will be some for the bigger bosses later in the game. Please don't let me down on this one, guys. The multiplayer function's okay. The first technical hurdle they had to clear was making sure crossplay works between consoles and PC, which a friend of mine helped me test. Thanks again, Dobbs. While we didn't have any issues getting connected together over Battle.net, there was some weirdness at the systems level. You choose which player's instance to join into, but then the quest log becomes mixed together without letting you know which player is on which quest. I thought it was really odd when an NPC told me to meet them in a forest at the end of a mission, and then when I joined my friend's session, the quest marker sent us to meet them inside of a cave instead. It turned out that he was on the last quest of the beta, and I was still behind by about 2 quests, so I got an early spoiler for the end. Thanks for that, Blizzard. If I'm being honest, I think that Diablo IV is going to be a pretty comprehensive package when it releases in full. Edgy gothic horror, a highly addictive gameplay loop, and a power fantasy and level of challenge that most games can only aspire to provide. If I haven't convinced you yet, there's supposed to be another open beta period for the people without early access coming March 24th to 27th, so you can try it out for yourself. Just expect to wait a while in a queue. You know what, maybe just wait until the second day it's running, just in case. But anyways, those are my thoughts on the Diablo IV early access beta. I'll see you guys next time.